Hey guys, another video for our How to Do Stuff in Japan playlist. Just before we get rolling on this one, anytime we make a video like this, there are some people who really don't like it. There are some people who'll say, I'm not Japanese, I can do whatever I want. There's some people who'll say, you know, I don't have to do that and I have a right to do whatever I want. Some people, if you made breathing mandatory, they'd refuse to do it just on principle, wouldn't they? We've seen a lot of people like that recently. So those guys won't like this video at all. So it's better you don't even watch it, that you just go and do something else, because you won't like this at all. Some other people, when they're guests in someone else's house or someone else's country, will try to do things that are sort of appropriate to the situation and be a bit more considerate. This video is for you, right? So we've almost made this video a couple of times, but just because the kickback we get or the resistance we get to videos like this, it's like, oh, I don't really want to talk about that. But we went to, there's a beach that we go to sometimes, and we've had a couple of bad experiences there, but usually it's pretty good, so we continue to go there. And then this weekend we went there again and had a bad, well, not a really bad experience, but you'll get the idea in a minute. So this beach is a very nice beach with very nice sand, and it has a car park that actually is actually right onto the beach. So you can park your car and walk onto the beach, which is very convenient for families, because, you know, when you've got kids and the 6 million things that you have to carry with you when you have kids, it's really convenient and really safe to just be able to walk onto the beach with all your stuff without crossing a street or anything, you know. So it's very popular with families, this place. So anyway, we turned up there on the weekend and parked our car right next to the beach, got out of the car with our million things and walked straight onto the sand right in front of the car, a few meters away from the car, sat down on the sand, put up our umbrellas and started to dig holes in the sand and play in the sand. And a little bit later, some vehicles came in and parked all around us, and there was a couple of vans we showed you recently, the big vans. A couple of vans reversed in, so the backs of the vans were facing towards the sand, either side of our car, and opened the doors on the back of their vans and cranked up the music, like really cranked it up, really boom, 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 nightclub volume, right? Nightclub volume, boom, 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 techno beat, feel the techno beat, man. And pulled out all their chairs and their coolers, their drink coolers, and took off all their clothes. almost took off all their clothes, and brought out all their tattoos. And it was a mix. Some South Americans, you know, there was some Brazilians, there's some people speaking Portuguese, some people speaking Spanish, a couple of people speaking English, a couple of people speaking Japanese. So it's sort of a mix, mostly foreigners, just a couple of Japanese in amongst them. And just had a huge party, which is great, you know, that's wonderful that they do that. But in Japan, where the place is usually so mellow and so peaceful and so calm, and everyone's so considerate towards other people, when people behave like that here, it's just so jarring, you know, it just stands out so much. And the other people who were on the beach around us, the Japanese people on the beach around us, are all sort of quietly sort of looking over their shoulders at this circus that was going on over there, you know. And it was just full on. It was really cringy. It was really cringy in so many ways. You don't want to be insensitive about this, you know, but just, you know, the beach atmosphere in Japan is fairly quiet and peaceful, and the way people behave and the way people dress on the beaches in Japan is fairly, we've showed you the beach fashion in Japan, is usually quite sort of conservative, and the behaviour is quite sort of peaceful, and they're out in the nature and they're wanting to have sort of a quiet nature type time. With some exceptions, we do know there are some fairly wild beaches in Japan, you know, where people do go wild, and you know, there's lots of G-strings and there's lots of wild behaviour, and you know, we know there's beaches like that, but this isn't one of them, you know, this just isn't one of them. This is really a family type place, you know. So it was just really full on. It was really full on. They're doing their full on, you know, party thing right there, you know. And what happened was, A lot of Japanese people left, and you could see them. You know, Japanese people don't go and tell other people, you know, you should do this, you should do that, and film them with their smartphones like they do in some countries. You know, Japanese people don't behave like that. But it's a lot more subtle. And if you watch the Japanese people, you could see that they'd look over at the circus, and then they'd talk to each other a bit and look over at the circus, and then they'd leave. And we basically sat there for a little while, and then just went, nah, can't do this. So we picked up all our million things and walked way down the beach as far as we could, with all our million things and our kids, you know, and resettled further down the beach, away from the scene a bit. But it was still full on, you know. It was still really full on, because even from there, the sound was still loud, and the whole act was full on, you know. And it was just really cringy. So there's a few things about this. One is, as foreigners, what I felt was that there were people looking at me. That's what I felt. When we were still sitting there 5-6 meters away from this scene, there was some Japanese people who were sort of, you know, and you could see them relocating or going back to their cars and leaving. And as they walked past us, they were looking at me. And it was like, yeah, they're wondering if I'm part of the act, you know, and they weren't impressed. But see, Japanese people are really subtle. What we find a lot with some videos we make like this is that people will say, that's not true, that's not true, I did that in Japan all the time and no one ever said anything about it. You know, we get that a lot. People will say, you know, I did that all the time in Japan and never had a problem. And that's because the way Japanese people react, you know, they don't come to you and say, you shouldn't do that, and film you with their smartphone. Usually, occasionally with some exceptions, someone will come and tell you that you're behaving badly, but it's really, really rare. Usually, if you behave badly in Japan, they'll just let you. They'll just let you behave badly, and nobody will say anything, you know, and that's a bit of a trap. That's a bit of a trap for people who don't know, you know, Japanese culture very well, or don't care. Is that nobody's going to tell them to behave like an adult, or nobody's going to tell them to behave politely with consideration for other people, you know. And just to clarify again, because there's always someone who gets upset with videos like this. Partying hard is an excellent thing to do. You know, stripping down to your G-string and dancing in the sun is a wonderful thing to do. Drinking in the middle of the afternoon is a great thing to do. Tattoos are great. We've got lots of friends in Australia that have tattoos, and we think tattoos are great art, you know. But when you're in Japan, you know, and you're in a place like that, Japanese thinking is very much about a time and a place. That's really true in Japan, that there are some places you can absolutely cut loose and go wild, and everyone will be quite comfortable with it if it's the right time and place. And there's a million examples. We've talked about this in previous videos, that some things you can do in some places. You can do something in some places at a certain time and you'll have no problems at all. But if you do it in a different place at a different time, it might cause waves. And that's Japanese thinking, is, you know, there's a time and place for everything, you know. And so if you go, that was the wrong place. It was the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, a Sunday, it was a Sunday afternoon, just after lunch, on a beach that's predominantly families, to turn up with absolutely, there's zero sort of awareness. You know, for us it was all so blatant, but for them, they just didn't seem aware. They all turned up in their cars and they all jumped out and they're all calling out to each other and stripping off their gear and turning up the music and getting out the beers. You know, and it was pretty cringy. There was a couple of dudes there that were as old as me, you know. There's old dudes, couple of old dudes there, stripping down to their little shorts and sitting out in the sun and flirting with the young girls, and it was really cringy. It was really, really cringy, you know. And the thing is, it makes huge waves, but the problem is too, and a lot of people really don't care about this, but the problem is too, I touched on it briefly, that people were looking at me as if, like, you know, is he part of it too? And the problem is that foreigners who live here, now we don't know how long those guys are going to be here. They might be here for 20 years, you know, you don't know. But the problem is that some people come here and behave like that, and it sort of labels all of us. Now, it's unfair. We know it's not fair to label everybody the same, and it's discrimination, and we know all that. We know all that. But it's inevitable. You know, if some Japanese people's experience of foreigners is that experience, then that's their thinking about foreigners. You know, and a lot of the stuff on that How to Do Stuff in Japan playlist, we've talked about stuff like this before, is that, you know, a lot of Japanese people, particularly places like that, might never have actually, you know, had close encounters with foreigners before, or had limited close encounters with foreigners before. And if that's their experience of foreigners, they're going to think, ah, dear. And that sort of does, in some, it's inevitable that does all the foreigners who are in Japan some damage. And you know, there's a lot of foreigners who feel this way, who try hard to not make waves, and try hard to sort of blend in as much as possible without making waves, and to try and do good things that you know, that sort of are good for our image, and just to sort of not have any hassles, you know. And some foreigners who are like that feel really bad and pissed off, some, when they see other foreigners behaving like that, because it's like, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? And look, again, we know they've got a right to do it, and there's no law against any of that stuff, and we know all that. We know all that, you know. Again, the people who go on about their rights to do whatever they want, that's fine. You've got a right. You do have a right. There's no doubt about it. You have the right to come to Japan and behave like that if you want to. There's no law against it. Well, there probably was, actually. The music was pretty loud, but, you know, no one's going to hassle you about it. No one's going to complain, probably. Nobody's going to report it to the police that there's people being too noisy, or, you know, nobody's going to complain. Drinking in public in Japan is legal. So, yeah, sure, you can do it if you want to. And problem is that we have, too, is a lot of people that come to Japan short term are here for a good time, right? And they really don't care. And so a lot of that sort of stuff is people that are here for 12 months. They've come here for 12 months, you know, they just finished university or something, come for a year, and they want to party hard for a year, and then they go home again. You know, and we understand that. And again, time and place. If you really want to do that, there are places, you know, there are nightclubs and party places where you can go and cut loose if you want to, you know, and nobody will say a word about it or think badly of you at all, because that's the place where people go, you know, and cut loose. But just here, it's so cringy, you know, and when you've lived here for a while, and in your life you're surrounded by Japanese people, you know, like everybody around me is Japanese, my friends and family and everybody around me, you know. I rarely encounter a foreigner in my life here, you know, and so you sort of get to a point where you see it through the Japanese person's eyes, because if that was a couple of carloads of Japanese dudes turning up doing the same thing, our feeling and our reaction and the reaction of the other Japanese people would have been the same. You know, if there was a bunch of Japanese dudes turning up and, you know, turning up the music and getting out and hanging out their tats and getting out the beer and partying on and scaring all the families away, and it's not scare, it's not a physical intimidation thing, it's just an uncomfortable thing. You've been sitting there, we're sitting there, you could hear the waves, crashing, because, you know, the beach is right there and the ocean's right there, and there was some little waves and they were sort of rolling in. You could hear them crashing, and the birds, you know, there's seahawks flying over and squawking, and those were the sounds that everyone on the beach had until those cars turned up. And once those cars turned up and started playing their music, we couldn't hear all that other stuff. It was just the sound of the techno beat, you know, and that's all we could hear then. So you had a choice of either leaving or trying to move as far away as possible to get to a point where you could hear the ocean again. You know, so it's not, the fact that there's foreigners doing it isn't necessarily an issue for the Japanese people. The Japanese people issue is that it's just disturbing the tranquility. But the fact that they're foreigners just adds another level to it, right? It's damaging the guests. You know, and I think, and again, some people, look, I live in Japan and I pay my taxes, I'll do whatever I want. That's fine, yep, good luck with that, you know, and there's a lot of people who think like that, that's fine. But there's other people who think that even if you do live here for 20 years, you're still really a guest, you know, and even if you don't want to think like that, even if you don't want to think you're a guest and try and be a good guest, how about just being a good citizen, or just a considerate human being, you know, because it's just, I mean, we experienced this before there. We had the same or similar experience there once before, where it was similar experience to this, where it was a bunch of wild party people there doing the same thing, and it was probably the same group actually. It was a bunch of South Americans and a bunch of other people all mixed together going hard, you know. And almost made a video about it then, you know, but just it's too much hassle, you know. We get too much resistance to videos like this. There's some people who really take objection to it, but just it just, the reason that we made this video is that was Sunday was a more extreme example. They were more wild, and the main reason we make these how-to videos in the first place is for those people who want to know about these things, because it is possible that some people that behave in a way that's not popular in Japan, or in a way that disturbs people around them, some people maybe do it because they're not aware of it. And that's easy. I mean, I've done that. I've made mistakes in Japan where I've said something or done something that I thought was okay and found out later it wasn't. And when I find out later it wasn't, it's like, oh no. And some people who watch our videos have said that, and some people who bought our How to Do Stuff in Japan book have said that. Oh, I wish I'd read that. One of the common comments, I wish I'd read this book before I went to Japan. So someone who's already been to Japan, and then later they read the book or watch these videos and go, oh no, I did that, you know. And I've had that experience too. Things that I did 20 years ago in Japan that I thought were okay, and now I know they aren't, and I go, oh no, remember I did that, oh no. And I still cringe about some of the things I did because I didn't know. And that's what these how-to videos are about. It's like, if people know these things, some people won't care and will behave the way they always behave anyway, but there will be some people maybe who go, oh right, that's good to know. The time and place thing's really important to remember. There's so many examples of that, where in the right time and the right place, some things you can do and it's quite acceptable. Whereas if you do the same thing in a different time at a different time in a different place, it won't be acceptable and people won't like you doing it. And that's the point. And this was just not the place for that sort of behaviour. So it was really bad. It was really bad. And again, not discriminating because the reason I painted the whole picture about them being foreigners and talking loudly, the language thing is relevant because you guys know yourselves, if you're in your hometown somewhere and you hear someone speaking another language, it stands out, doesn't it? Someone who's speaking your language, it tends to blend in a bit more and you don't notice it so much. But when someone's speaking another language loudly, it really stands out, doesn't it? And it's just a fact. You know, I notice if someone speaks English loudly where I am, I notice, because you don't hear it, you know. And so these guys jumping out, yelling out Portuguese and Spanish and English to each other, you know, and carrying on. The whole scene is stripping down to their minimum clothes with tats hanging out everywhere. And again, this isn't discriminating against any of those things. It's just, this is the way the people on the beach would have experienced it. This was the experience. It's just stating the fact of this is what the experience was, you know. And as I'm telling you this, I remember having parties like this in Australia, where my friends were stripping down in summer, stripping down to minimum gear with tats hanging everywhere and drinking heavily and loud techno music. And, you know, we've done all that. We've done all that good fun, you know, but this wasn't the place for it. You know, in Australia we have some places like botanical gardens that people go to stroll through and look at the flowers. It'd be like taking that techno party that I was remembering from our house and doing the same thing in the middle of the botanic gardens, you know, and the reaction you'd get exactly the same, right? So that's the picture. It's not a discriminating against anybody for anything. It's just saying this is what it's like. This is what it's like, you know, and it was just a really bad scene. It was just a really bad scene. And it does us all damage, you know. The flow-on effect, there's a lot of people when we make these how-to videos say, oh, you know, I did that in Japan, there was no problem from it. You just don't know. You know, you really don't. You know, we know examples where people have done things and said things, you know, and later one of our friends has gone, oh yeah, that guy, you know, and you just know that. You don't know. There might have been someone who was thinking about offering you a job or thinking about inviting you to a party or thinking about something like that, and then you come here and you behave in a way that causes waves, and they'll think, oh no, maybe we won't recommend him for that job. Maybe we won't help him get an apartment. Maybe we won't help him, you know, maybe we won't invite him to that party because he might behave like that. you know, and it happens. And some people don't, that's discrimination. Yeah, maybe, but it's just the reality of the situation, you know. If people in Japan don't trust you or don't trust foreigners to behave appropriately, they won't, you'll miss out on opportunities. And a lot of people don't even notice. You know, there's a good chance that most of those guys that were partying on there had no idea of the effect they're having the people around them, that all these people were moving further away or getting in their cars and leaving. There's a good chance they were having such a good time. There's a good chance they didn't even notice any of that, or they didn't care, one or the other. But you know, there's a lot of that happens here. If you come here and behave badly, you know, behave in an inappropriate way or make people uncomfortable or any of that stuff, there's a good chance you won't notice the consequences. And that's those people that say, oh, that's not true. All the Japanese people told me that my tattoos were really cool. Yeah, no doubt, you know, and that's what Japanese people are like, whether they think your tats are cool or not. Maybe they thought they were cool, maybe it's true, or maybe they were just being polite, you know. And maybe, oh yeah, your tats are really cool, but is that guy going to get a job? When our friend came, we got a guy that's heavily tatted and he's sleeved. He goes right up to his wrists, both wrists, and it cuts down at the front, but then his whole chest and his back is covered in tats. That's one of our friends from Australia. And when he came, I said to him, hey man, you'll get discriminated against here if you have your tats out, you know. And he turned up and he wore long sleeve shirts the whole time he was here. And, you know, just out of consideration, that guy's travelled the world. He's been to lots of different countries and he knows that, you know, you want to know what the culture's about and sort of blend in the best you can, you know. And there were times where he broke them out. There were times where we were at barbecues and things. And it was the right people, the right place, the right time and place again, see? And there was a couple of guys there who were interested in tattoos. I said, hey man, show me your tats. And he took off his shirt, you know, and I thought, whoa, big effect. But again, right time and right place, it was the okay thing to do. But there was a lot of other places that we went at different times where it wouldn't have been a good thing to do. And so that guy is a smart guy who's considerate of others, and he just kept them hidden away. Just this, you know, why make ripples? It's like loud techno music. Excellent fun in the right time and the right place, right? You know, good stuff, but right time and right place. And a family beach in the middle of a Sunday afternoon, just not the right time and place, you know. G-strings, who doesn't love a good G-string bikini? You know, excellent. Some girl dancing some Latin dance in a little G-string bikini. Who's going to object to that, you know? Wonderful. But, again, right time, right place. It was the wrong time. It was the wrong time. Wrong time and wrong place for that behaviour. It really was. It really, really was. And we're talking about a huge coastline around Japan here too. There's a lot of beaches you can go to around Japan where you could do that. You know, pulling up at a family beach in amongst the other families and doing that behaviour is just unnecessary. You know, it's just unnecessary. So hopefully there'll be, you know, sadly there'll be 100 people who object to this video, don't like it at all. I have a right to behave however I want. No doubt, but hopefully there'll be one person who's coming to Japan in the future who thinks, yeah, I have to keep that in mind, right time and right place, and try and avoid doing things that are going to make waves and make people feel bad. I mean, some of us think about that. We don't want other people to feel uncomfortable or give them an unpleasant experience, and that's what this is about, you know. Let's not do that, you know. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.